Hello everyone, welcome back to the SMITE Comprehensive Guide to Jungle. Today we're going to be talking about Ratatoskr in the jungle, because we've already talked about him in the solo lane, and I just randomly got jungle, so I was like, you know what, let's talk about Ratatoskr in the jungle. Now, obviously, we're moving away from a kind of hybrid Ratatoskr build into a definitely more aggressive, damage-based Ratatoskr, and there are some proper ways to approach this and some improper ways to approach this. And there are going to be some similarities to how this is built, but we're going to essentially be looking at the other two acorns. Whereas when we're playing a solo Ratatoskr, you're looking at either the thick bark or the evergreen or whatever it's called acorn. With jungling Rat, you're looking at the other two acorns, which basically, I can't remember the names of them off the top of my head, but it comes down to either crit Rat or ability Rat. That's what it comes down to. And that can be an interesting question indeed. And ultimately, which one you will be going for is going to depend on a combination of the enemy team and what you're more comfortable with. For example, I can already tell you right now that I'm not going to want to go for a crit Ratatoskr, because if I come up against Bellona, that's going to be a really rough time. If I come up against Xbalanque, he can escape me a little bit easier if I'm trying to go for the crit build. You know, you've got that as well. It's just going to be a bit more difficult to pull off a crit build here. And also, I would like to point out that Bakasur is a bit tankier of a jungling opponent than the average junglers, simply because every time he eats a minion or a jungle camp, he gets a protection buff. So, typically, when you're looking at tankier enemy compositions, you want to lean a little bit more towards the abilities because they have access to... Yes, you as a auto attacker, you might have access to Executioner and Chin Size, absolutely. But at the end of the day, for a lot of various people, typically because protections matter a bit more to... okay. Because protections have a bit more effect on auto attackers, you really aren't going to go for that. I'm not really sure why, and I'm not sure if you can hear that, but one of my father's tools in the cellar is going off, and I'm not really sure why. That was odd. So, again, just like with last time, we are very specifically going with Flurry. For the exact same reason. There is no difference here, but we are going to talk about the acorns, because you could go with the Bristle Brush, which is going to give you lifesteal, it's going to crit strike, or you could go with the Thistle Thorn, and that is fairly handy. I'm actually thinking... No, this is probably... Yeah, that's standard start. Has this Ra oh... You mean actually start at red, and then I go back for the... Okay, this is a bit of an unusual start, but I haven't really talked about this because I'm not a huge fan of it. But what this essentially does is you are putting the jungler a little behind to put your mid laner a little bit ahead. The technical thing here is, and this is where it gets fairly interesting, you clear the speed buff a little faster, but in exchange you reach it a little slower, so it's not really that much faster, to be honest. There really is not a big time difference there. Some people may claim, oh yeah, there's a big time difference there. There really isn't. Mostly it comes down to the fact that I can grab that Harpy on the way over. Ra actually should have come with me on that, to be honest, but that's either me misunderstanding how he sees the start or me misunderstanding... I'm not really sure here which one of us is confused, but one of us is confused. But don't get too stressed about the start between the two of them. They both achieve roughly the same accomplishment. Yeah, he doesn't really need to come with me at this point. I'm just going to be popping over here to grab these harpies over here. Alright. And he's been jumped by... Who? Oh, Bakasur. That's fine. Bakasur does not have any kind of hard crowd control, except for his ult, which gives a silence and I think a slow. Maybe a cripple, I'm not 100% sure. So we're just going to go on ahead and go around here. Now, I recommended here, very specifically, the ability-based, and I pointed out this is a little bit better on the... just using against tankier comps. This is because it's just a little bit easier to work this against tankier comps. Okay, that's a bit unfortunate. It's mostly due to Ra having no escape options, though. That's what that basically is coming down to. They're just trying to poke me out at this point. It's fine. We're not too concerned here. He tried. That was wicked predictable. Whoop. And now we're just gonna... no. Yeah, I figured he would be able to steal that. There is very little you can do to prevent Bakasur from stealing stuff from you if he's ahead. Actually, we're going to go on... no, we should probably go back. I'm on the verge of death. I'm going to go ahead and increase to Jotun's Wrath. Now, we're going to be building fairly aggressively into penetration and percentage of health damage, but that's very easy to build with Ratatoskr, so don't be too concerned about that. Oop. Keep on increasing Flurry. Alright, so I'm going to have to keep an eye on mid lane, and I already know this because Rod died first off, and clearly duo lane isn't going to need much in the way of help. Now, some other people might think or say, look, you started at red, now you know, Rod died. No, that's not why Rod died. Rod died because we got a little too aggressive there. One of us made a mistake. I either should have been in lane with Ra early, or Ra should have cleared the Harpy with me. I'm kind of inclined to say I probably should have been in lane with Ra. That's going to be a problem for Mulan. The fact that Bakasur took her blue. She has enough mana where she should be okay for the short term. I am going to come over here and keep an eye on this situation. I'm going to make sure that she doesn't have too much of a problem with Bellona here. So we're going to go ahead and clear these, and then we're going to probably gank Bellona with the specific intention of not actually killing her. I don't want to accomplish that. That's not my goal here. My goal is very specific, to just weaken her down, get her to back off a little bit, and give Mulan some breathing room until her blue buff comes back up. That's what I'm looking for at this point. And that's all I wanted. She commits hard on that. Okay. Are you full committed to that? Alright, now, she made an interesting mistake there. Yes, I died. That's fine. I'm going to be behind Bakasur. I was already going to be honest. She full committed to that and died to Mulan, who already had a kill. Mulan is now going to be in a so much stronger position that I will no longer need to even be concerned about Mulan. She's going to pull so nicely far ahead. She might even hit level 7 before Bellona returns to the area. So that's kind of the hope there. I'm going to use what is a really old strategy that one of the old pros used to use, where he would sacrifice himself for the good of his team as the jungler. I might not even be sacrificing myself. Let's see if Ra picks it up. That's fine. The fact he doesn't have to. We broke even on that. That is okay. What we're going to grab now, very importantly, is Jotun's Vigor, not Jotun's Cunning. Mostly because you don't need it for Rat, alright? You might think, oh, the cooldown reduction is really nice. Yeah, but consider Dart already has cooldown reduction whenever you hit people with his other abilities, it's really not that important for Ratatoskr to have Jotun's Vigor. I've always found Jotun's, the other one, I can't remember it's off the top of my head, to always be more effective. Also, keep in mind, look, how Mulan is dominating Bellona right now. She's a level ahead, as I anticipated. This is fine. Now, back to the... And I can't, for the life of me, remember the pro's name right now. I have a terrible memory for names, but he was a pro-level jungler. Just absolutely top of the board. And he had this very unusual strategy, which is probably what I'll wind up being kind of shoehorned into. But he would sacrifice his own benefit to benefit his allies and put them in a much stronger position. By basically sacrificing himself, the rest of his team was able to do much better. Okay, that's fine. We're okay. We are okay. Now, the key thing here is that Bakasur died. Alright, that's fairly important for this, because this means I know for a fact he wasn't stealing my speed. Now, I did stay too long there. I shouldn't have wasted my blink on that. That was a mistake on my part. I didn't need to do that. I also have a weird sense very soon... Oh, Cupid's going to just kick Xiblanque around, which is totally fine. How is Cupid doing compared to Xiblanque? Cupid's winning. Alright, that's fine. And Mulan just died again. Not Mulan. Bellona just got killed by Mulan again. So we're fine there. Okay, good. Bakasur arrived too late. I knew Bakasur was going to try to go over there and gank. The reason why I knew that is because obviously Bellona was having a hard time there, and what he would normally want to do is rotate over and try to relieve some of that pressure off of Bellona. The problem being, of course, that by that point she was already dead. He just wasted his ult. He's committing to this. That's bold. Okay. Alright, so at this point, we're now just going to move over to the right lane, because I know for a fact Bakasur is looking to gank that, and that's because the dual lane just moved pretty far up there. We're going to probably see Bakasur coming over there pretty soon, if I had to take a guess. Yep, there he is. They pushed up, he's going to commit. See, the Bakasur's only mistake is that he's hard committing to a gank that stopped being a good gank after the fact. See, he's probably still hanging around here, but this is not a good gank anymore. Where is Bakasur? Where did he go? There he is. This isn't going to turn out how you think it's going to, I don't think. I overcommitted. That was 100% my fault. I outpaced my support. If I had waited for Ganesh, I probably would have lived there. So that is 100% my fault. That is no one else's fault. I overcommitted. And it's very easy to do with Ratatoskr because his ult makes it, you know, you go a little faster because you're doing your little tree hops. I was ahead. I just basically succumbed to temptation. And that is straight up how that went. And as a result, they're going to have a really rough time because I think Bakasur got the kill for that. Pretty sure. Yeah, he did. Because Xiblanque still has 2. Now, why am I not going immediately over there? Why am I stopping for speed? Just because, quite honestly, first off, I needed the gold to increase to the Thistlethorn Acorn. Second off, it does give me a move speed boost. Third off, I can do this. And help out mid lane as well. Nice. There's Xiblanque, there's Cupid. Alright, I'm coming over for this gank very specifically because Cupid is not going to be here. He's backing. I'm ahead of Xiblanque. You did not dash for me like I thought you were. Now, my goal here is not to kill Xiblanque. That's not my goal here. That right there. If he backs, I have accomplished my goal. Yes, he backed. Okay. I just wanted to make sure that Cupid would not be losing anything. See, Cupid actually made the correct response as well. He went immediately for the purple buff and soloed that. because he had the time to, because I cleared some of the wave. Not all the wave. That's a very important distinction. I did not full clear his wave. I did clear too much of it, though. I will freely admit that. I did over-clear that. I should have left more minions alive than I did from the enemy's wave. But I'm trying to catch up to Bakasor. Yeah, I'm probably still a little bit behind him. Let's actually look at this really quick while I'm killing this regular. No, I'm ahead of him, actually. I did not need to... Okay, that was a mistake on my part. I didn't need to clear that many minions then. I assume that Mulan is just coming over here. Yeah, she is. She just doesn't have teleport up, though. So we're going to go ahead and drop this for her really quick. There we go. And there she is. And she's going to have that up, and that's just really nice. I spent too long on that. I would have liked to have done that a little bit faster to cover mid a little bit better here. Good enough, but I could have been slightly faster on that. We're going to come over here now and clear speed. Now, my allies are in the enemy jungle. You might be tempted to say that's an overcommit. That is not in this scenario because we're ahead of them by a decent margin. And also, I can theoretically get there a little faster than Bakasor because I can see my ult is up. So I can theoretically rotate a little bit faster than Bakasor can. Now, they took one, Bakasor took one, and then I'm going to have to try to save Ganesh right here. Or avenge Ganesh, I guess, is what this is going to actually devolve into. Or not, because holy cow. This, I could make something happen here. Now, why did I interrupt him very specifically there? That was a risk. What are you thinking, Professor? Well, I knew he was going to take damage from the Naga thing. I was pretty sure he just ate a minion over here, so I was pretty sure his eat wasn't up. I am so dead. I did not think that he would be coming back so quick. Oh, that was a good play. That was a good play. He's somehow lost me. Oh, no, he got distracted by the purple buff. I'm sorry, Cupid, you're going to lose your purple, but I had to survive. Now, my next item is very specifically going to be Soul Eater. This should not surprise anyone. Soul Eater is incredibly powerful on Ratatoskr because all his abilities do damage. And he's got really good... I don't care whether you're going crit rat or you're going ability rat. You should have Soul Eater. Alright? It's just the way it goes. If you're going with crit Ratatoskr, you don't need Jotun's... What is this? Jotun's Vigor? You don't need that. What is the other Jotun's? Hold on. Jotun's Cunning, pardon me. If you're going for the crit build, you don't need Jotun's at all, because you're obviously going for crits. Yeah, that was a triple. Are we committing to this, Mulan? Oh, well, she's wicked ahead, so I suppose that's not necessarily a bad idea for her. Okay. I don't have my lifesteal yet. She just... Well, I have some lifesteal, but just not enough. We're just going to pass in and out of this fight. Now, notice I went back in when my little Jotun's Vigor passive went back up. That's exactly what kept me alive there. I'm now going to make sure that he dies by reducing his protections for my team. There we go. Now, you have... That's actually why when you're going with Ability Rat, that's specifically why you go for Jotun's Vigor so early. That's why I actually increased that glyph. That is why. That can save you in a surprisingly large number of situations. And right there, I was able to turn it around and get 2 kills. I'm going to get slapped by this. We're going to throw this out there because we have the Jotuns. There we go. But that's very specifically... Oh, my goodness. That was a good play. He was really paying attention. That was good. We got the Pyromancer. If I'd been paying a bit more attention or I'd been warding a little bit better, I probably wouldn't have died to that. That's partially on me. My next move, obviously, we're going to be stacking Soul Eater. Again, I want to mention this just because I don't think this is talked about enough. This is the one stacking item I'm comfortable building on junglers because things just have to die in your vision range for you to get a stack. Unlike Transcendence, where you actually have to deal the finishing blow, and it takes too long for you to kill, get the Transcendence stacks with jungling because you're going 3 at a time, rather than the 6 at a time you would normally have with your usual amount of damage output. We're actually going to go for Hydra's Lament very specifically. I'll talk about that in a second. So anyways, back to the main point here. You are very much... Do I really want... probably not, actually. I'll have to think about what I actually want there. No, that should actually work. Boom. Nope, you're gone. Oh, we're not committing to this. Okay. Probably a good idea considering he's kind of slapping and I doubt... Hello. I threw that away. Unfortunately for you, I whiffed. My goodness. Alright. So, I have to very carefully think of my next move. What do I really need here? No, we're gonna go ahead and commit to the Hydra's Lament. We're gonna pull the trigger on that one. I'm gonna overcap on my cooldowns, but that's okay. There are worse things to have happen to you. Now, Hydra's Lament is going to be another item that you can very easily incorporate into a crit rat build as well. That's going to really depend on how you prefer to build your crit builds. It's definitely a strong option. I sometimes build it against tankier compositions if I'm going with crit rat, and the crits are just going to be too powerful because they don't have anything that can counteract that. Again, one of the reasons I did not go for a crit build in this scenario is very specifically due to Bellona's presence on the field. We're just going to go ahead and stall out here. Ah, good play, good play. And then Ymir saves me from Bakasor, which is kind of ironic. Still hanging around here? He didn't get the... Okay. And you're just dead. I love Ratatoskr so much. One of my favorite assassins, just because of his incredible diversity. That's actually something really nice about Ratatoskr is... You know the element of surprise I talked about where crazy out-of-role picks can sometimes work because the enemy isn't expecting it and doesn't know how to react? You can achieve a miniature version of this with Ratatoskr because no matter what happens, no matter how much an enemy has played against Ratatoskr, you never know what build he's going to go for. I could have actually gone with a jungle full tank Ratatoskr and still done fairly well. I've experimented around with that idea, but it has such an ugly early game that it's generally not worth it, at least in the current meta. So if you're going to jungle with Ratatoskr, don't go tank Ratatoskr unless you're really desperate or you know that one of your enemies is... Somehow you know that one of your enemies has fought a lot of Ratatoskr in the jungle lane. But you can still bring a surprise to the fight by being able to switch between crit or ability-based Ratatoskr, which is something that not a lot of assassins can do. They can't really use one or the other very effectively. In fact, the only one I can think of that can is very specifically Ravon. I'm not sure how I got that, but okay. I shouldn't have got that stun. And looks like I goofed that. Whoa. Okay, you threw that away. He really did. That was a horrifically bad blink. He wasn't expecting me to wait in ambush. I don't want to fight that. I don't want to rush that unless Mulan goes in first. Yeah, we can... Shoot! He had Aegis. If he hadn't had Aegis, I could have killed him, popped right back out of there, no problem. That was a miscalculation on my part. I had not been paying enough attention to whether or not he had Aegis. Actually, do I... No, I'm not level 20 yet. Never mind. I was going to say, do I want to go for... No, we don't have level 20. Okay, so... Pretty soon you're going to really be able to see why this is very specifically where I go with... The build I go with against tankier comps. You can already see... You start off with the delightful, obviously, Boomba's Dagger for the passive there. You go into Jotun's Vigor that gives you 10 flat pen. That's going to push you into the early game. Then you're going to get your first 10% from Soul Eater, another 10% from Hydra's Lament. You're going to get another 10% from Heartseeker. When we evolve this into Boomba's Spear, I suppose I could go Boomba's Hammer, but I like Boomba's Spear better for the penetration a lot of the times. But when we get into Boomba's Spear, we're going to get another 10% pen. That's 40% penetration. Cleanly incorporated into an ability build. It's absolutely glorious, and do not underestimate it, but that's generally why when I play Ratatoskr against tankier comps like this, I go to the ability-based build, usually. Ganesh, you gave me a heart attack. I had no idea who you were. I thought it was Bakasur trying to ambush me in the middle of a farm. Is this... That's fine. Okay, I was going to say, are they going after the pyro? Here, take some... Are they going after this? No. Should we? I guess. Okay, good. Perfect. This is just absolutely fantastic. All right. Yes. Acorn Blast. The interesting thing is that Acorn Blast is the one that I can't speak tonight. That increases their damage taken, because that's your ranged abilities. So that means you can actually initiate using that, which you don't normally want to do. Oh, you ulted. We're out. Alright, sure. He was way out of position. He shouldn't have been that far up by himself when he was behind. And their whole team is behind. He should never have been there. That was a huge mistake on Ymir's part. He had zero business being there. I really shouldn't be attacking the fire giant without without at least increasing some items here, but look, I'm willing to commit to this. I'm fine. I don't think they're going to try to contest this, to be honest. They could. Don't get me wrong. This is a bit of a risk because they could absolutely contest that even now. I just don't think that they had the guts to do so without Ymir, and I was right. I think the Bellona popped over for a brief look. They might be wondering, why did I just go for Boomba's Spear instead? Mostly because whenever I kill anything that isn't an enemy god or a minion, I get a power buff of 10%. Which, you can see I just went to 341 power. Pardon me. That's going to get... Pardon me, I just have to choke on some saliva for a second. That gets even uglier when I get Heartseeker. Additionally, I'll be able to be doing percentage of health damage at that point as well. So it's just an incredibly powerful item for a jungler, especially if you're doing ability-based damage, as I have been building this whole time. I'll probably do another Ratatoskr episode specifically showcasing the crit build at one point. Okay, we need to back up. I don't want to fight them here. We don't need to fight them here. There's nothing to fight for. We're not going to take that Phoenix right now. We don't have Ra with us. Why are you still up there? What is this? I'm going to go over into the jungle here, and I'm going to grab myself... I was going to grab myself a quick buff, but that's apparently not going to happen. I just wanted to take the buff out so I could get a damage increase. Was my actual intention there, but clearly I'm out of luck on that one. Just going to have to make do with this. The old-fashioned way. The catapult triggers the buff. That's interesting. I did not know that. You shouldn't be here. You've made a fairly aggressive mistake. Outlast it. Ah, I didn't outlast it long enough. That was unfortunate. That was very unfortunate. We are going to need acceleration, I think. What is she building that she's so squishy? Is my pen that high? No, she only has... What is that build? Alright, I have some criticisms of the Bellona's build, but I'll talk about that at the end of the match. No, I can kind of understand that. No, Bakasur's build mostly makes sense. Yeah, no. His build is fine. It's why he's doing so well. Yeah, I can understand most of this. It's just Bologna's build is weird. Again, I'll talk about that at the end of the game. At the end of the match, I'll talk about her crazy build. That's pretty wild. That's some wild stuff right there. There's some issues here. But, off we go. And... ta-da! Get ourselves a nice little jungle Boomba spear buff. I'm going to let Cupid solo clear that. I don't need a ton of money at this point. The only thing I don't have upgraded at this point is my blink, actually. We're going to clear this specifically for the Boomba spear buff. Don't underestimate it. We're now going to look for kills. We're deep in their jungle. There's Bologna out of place again. She keeps doing that. No. you don't get away from Ratatoskr. At some point, it's just impossible. The only person I can say can consistently get away from Ratatoskr once he has if he has speed buff, that is a key word here. Once he has speed buff and fully upgraded Acorn, the only character I've seen consistently be able to escape Ratatoskr is Mercury. Just because he has better baseline move speed. I'm actually going to pop over here really quick and not get an increase in my damage output. We're just stalling for Mulan, but really, Cupid should be doing this, not Mulan. No, you're going to take forever at this, and we really don't need you here. This is not where we want you. Oh, holy cow. What was I... Oh, I walked into his ult, of course. That was what the problem was. I couldn't see it, because that was actually a really good combination there. The She Blanca ult combined with the Bakasur ult was really effective in terms of me not being able to see where he'd put down his ult, and that was what crippled my ability to use my dash, because there is a cripple on that ult, although it doesn't necessarily always work for some reason, which I'm pretty sure is just a glitch. They might have fixed that. But that's why I was having an issue there. I couldn't dash because I was in his ult, and I just dropped dead because I couldn't see what was going on. That was actually a really effective combination. That was really well played. I'm going to be very honest. Alright, so our next move, we're just going to go for the speed buff, grab that, and maybe wipe out the mid-harpies right there. The left-hand mid-harpies. Again, we're just trying to keep that Boomba spear buff going. It's a 30-second buff. And of course, we're not really going to have too hard of a time wiping out the wave. Now, I want you to see the damage spike. It's going to be roughly 30. But 30 is a lot. 36. Yep, there we go. It's 35. Well, no, it's 31 specifically. And then we're going to go see if we can save Ganesh. Grab this buff really quick. Ult in. Second too late. No, he's still alive. Speed me up. If I can take out Bakasur. He's going to try to heal off the speed buff, I think. No. Nice. I catch up to him, I kill him. Just like that. If I get away with this, do you see me here? You do. I got a little cheeky with that, I'll be honest. Whoa. I got wicked arrogant with that. Don't do this. Don't do that. Don't play like me there. That was me being supremely arrogant. I should never have been there. I might be ahead, but I'm not ahead by that much. Not anymore. He's level 20. He's got a full build. He doesn't have his relics upgraded for some reason, though. Executioner. No, that's a mistake. Well, alright. Asterisk. That's not a mistake, this is. This should be Aussie then. If you were going to build Executioner from the beginning, This should have been Aussie. You don't need 20% pen and then Ferocious Executioner. That does not compute. I'll explain why at the end of the match, but that was a bad choice on his part. At least as an assassin, that's a bad choice. That works for hunters, and I'll talk about why. Again, I'll talk about why at the end of the match, but that is not something you want to do as an assassin. Executioner is fine, by the way, at least on auto attackers. So we're going to, let me see, they just killed Bologna, which, no offense to the Bologna, doesn't mean much. Because the bulk of their damage is in Yu Huang and Bakasur. I specifically ulted to make sure that I wasn't going to have some kind of weird problem there. Hi. Let me just get out of that little fiasco. Give me Blink. Never mind. Don't need it. Oh, alright. Take you out, then I surrendered. Alright, so what specifically happened there? There was a lot going on in this match, actually. And we have a good bit to talk about. Alright. So, there were a couple of weird things going on in this match. We'll talk about Mulan, why Ganesh is complaining. Ganesh has some justification for this. I'm still giving the Mulan the teamwork here. We have a lot to talk about. Okay. So, actually, I'm going to address the Mulan thing really quick first, because that's not a build thing, that's a strategy thing. So, what Ganesh is complaining about here was Mulan's weird, split pushing. Solo laners really shouldn't be split pushing. That's something that, generally speaking, specific assassins or the ADC can pull off. Now, yes, Mulan was doing an okay job of taking out the towers by split pushing. The problem is that Mulan didn't build for auto attacks, nor did she build that much in the way of penetration. And if you're going to be taking out towers, if you're looking to take out towers, you need penetration and you need attack speed. This is generally why ADCs are the ones responsible for structure destruction. Okay? Right now, typically historically, but particularly right now in the current meta, hunters have access to more penetration than ever before. It's always been easy to build penetration on hunters. Generally speaking, there was 1 year there wasn't. Assassins took over the job for that 1 year, but that's all in the past. But I'll probably talk about that more if that kind of meta ever shows up again. But right now, hunters have access to the penetration they need to actually do their job of taking out structures. And so typically when you split push, you want to be a hunter split pushing. Again, there are certain exceptions, certain assassins that can get away with this. Ratatoskr generally isn't one of them. Although the way I built, I probably could have done an okay job of this. Again, I wasn't focused on attack speed, so I still wouldn't have been as good at it as Cupid was. Now, this also does bring up a very interesting flaw in Cupid's build, where his only penetration was actually from Fail Not. It was only 10%. He really should have built something a little bit more aggressively pen. I actually would have preferred to see him build Dominance versus Executioner here. But it's not too bad. Actually, I would have preferred Dominance over Chin's size. Now, why would I say Dominance plus Executioner for Cupid, but not for Bakasur? We can segue right in here. I'm not sure segue was the right word. But why is it okay for a Hunter to build Executioner and significant penetration, and it's not okay for an Assassin to do the same in most circumstances? Again, there are always going to be exceptions. The primary reason is because Hunters, again, one of their main tasks is to eliminate structures. It's just how it goes. That is one of their jobs. They're ranged, so they can more safely attack towers. They can stand near the perimeter, so when the minions die off, they can more quickly exit the tower's range than an Assassin can, who is melee. They, again, have really easy access to penetration that works really well with their builds. We have Dominance, we've got Silver Branch Bow, we have, for Pete's sakes, we've got Hydra's Lament, of course. The ability-based hunters can also build Heartseeker if they really want to, although very few hunters can get away with that, but that's a different conversation for a different time. It's very easy for hunters to build penetration and still maintain the attack speed and the power they need to keep on trucking. Not quite the same is said for assassins, because assassins are melee. First off, it's riskier for them to be attacking towers in that kind of way in the first place. And second off, assassins, their job is to eliminate enemy squishier targets. They don't really need penetration for that. There's a third individual issue with Bakasor, who has an ability to temporarily buff his auto attacks to do true damage, which is just damage that isn't mitigated at all. He needs even less penetration than the average assassin does, okay? So the fact that Bakasor built so much penetration here, he actually has more penetration than probably you can check it 12 sticks at, is a little weird, given that he's got Silver Branch. Now, I don't necessarily criticize the Silver Branch Serrated Edge combination alone. That's fine. I can understand where he's coming from, but at that point, he really didn't need Executioner, which is a better... This is a better item on him anyways, because this is going to be increasing his true damage. Quite frankly, what Bakasor really should have been doing... Now, granted, he played really well, but that's because I goofed my early game. And Bakasor very logically picked on Ra a decent amount of the time. I'll talk about that in a second. But what Bakasor really should have gone for is... I would have said... Well, actually, originally he had Golden Blade, which is fine. He had Golden Blade here originally. Then he had Hasten Katana. Then he had Chin Size. So far, this is all fine. Because, you know, with Golden Blade... Bakasor's flaw as a jungler is that his camp clear is trash. He can very quickly eliminate the lead minion. But after that fact, it becomes a slugfest with the smaller minions. There's no AoE that he's got access to, so Golden Blade is fairly important on Bakasor, and one of the few assassins that consistently needs to build that. So that was, you know, the usual start for Bakasor, and then he goes for Hasten Katana. Great pickup on Bakasor, helps him stick to targets, it gives him a little movement speed to get him through the jungle faster. Very nice. Builds Chin Size. We had a bit of a tankier composition. We had Mulan, we had Ganesh. Ra increases the protections of allies in the heal. So going for a quote-unquote pen build with Chin Size and some form of penetration or Executioner is the move to make. That's the smart move. Then he goes for Serrated Edge. Now, originally, this was a really great pickup. We got 10% pen, we've got some lifesteal, you get more power and lifesteal when your abilities are on cooldown. That's great time. That increases your move speed. It's a wonderful thing. Then he builds Executioner. Now, Executioner, specifically the Ferocious Executioner, is incredible on Bakasor. The problem with building both on an assassin is now you've got this 20% penetration being weakened by the fact that Executioner is kicking around, because this is a really great way to introduce you to how protection reduction works in comparison to everything else. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. Alright, this is a slightly involved discussion here. Let's see if we can find someone with a really good amount of protections. Let's take Ganesh, alright? Let's pretend Ganesh has exactly 300 protections, just for a bit easier maths. So you can follow along a little bit easier if you don't like math. Let's just pretend he's got 300 protections exactly. So, Ferocious Executioner is reducing Ganesh's physical protection by 7% for 3 seconds. That's a maximum of 4 stacks. We're just going to go ahead and really quickly run that math. If you wanted the approximate, it's about a third here. Actually, let's go with the approximate. So we're taking away roughly 100 protections from Ganesh. He's down to 200 protections. Great. It is at this point that the penetration takes effect. This is where you calculate the penetration. After protection reduction happens, then percentage penetration happens. So after we've already reduced Ganesh's protections down by a third, then that 200 remains. Now we're taking away 20% of that for the penetration. That's only 40. Whereas if we had not had Execution, that would have been 60 down. Right, now you can, first off, first off, you're probably thinking to yourself, well, with 20% penetrations, 60 reduction brings you from 300 to 240, whereas the Executioner was bringing it down by much more. And yeah, that is true. This is why Executioner is a much better protection reduction item, or pen item, so to speak, to lump them all broadly speaking, for assassins. Again, assassins are trying to take out specific targets. And going with protection reduction is often better for ability-based assassins because they have Executioner that they can bust out. Now, 40% pen, which is what I had here, versus, say, their Ymir. Their Ymir had 200, we'll round this to 250. I had 40% penetrations, right? So I'm pulling away very specifically 100 protections there because I had 40% pen. So he had basically 150 protections worth, and that's not including the increased damage percentage from my Thistlethorn Acorn. We're going to ignore that temporarily. But yeah, fairly decent. But even with 40% penetrations, you can still see where Ganesh still only would have been losing a good... Oh gosh. He would have been losing fairly decent amount of... he would have been losing 120 protections from 300, which would be down to 180, right? Which is a little bit better than Executioner. That's fine. But Executioner is one item, alright? Whereas you need two pen items at minimum to hit 20% penetration, right? And you already have the attack speed. So, by stacking all these protections, Bakasor, well, yes, he was absolutely able to blast through Ganesh's protections, also was reducing his own penetration effects due to the combination of the two. And frankly, Ferocious Executioner is enough for Bakasor because, as I mentioned earlier, he's got true damage on a temporary buff, and you're hitting enemies for your building stacks on enemies that provides 2% increased damage, stacking up to 10 times. That's 20%. A 20% boost to your true damage, plus the protection reduction, plus your regular auto attack damage. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to build this much penetration on Bakasor normally. Now you have... I don't know what Warchi Follower was specifically thinking when they built this, but I'm guessing that the Xi-Blanque's basically downfall did play some role in this, although the Xi-Blanque did in fact build decent amounts of penetration with Wind Demon and Silver Branch here. So I don't really think that was a huge concern, but Bakasor kind of shot himself in the foot there, and you'll actually see throughout the match that while Bakasor definitely maintains a strong performance throughout, you can kind of see that he also doesn't really go past it. He just plays really well throughout, and he doesn't really go really high or drop really low at any point. I think Bakasor would have been better off at this point. We had the first egg, we had Golden Blade, we had Hasten Katana, we had Chin Size. Great, all along the way. That's fine. This could have been Asi, which would have increased Bakasur's sustainability in particularly ugly fights, which I think would have helped him out in a lot of fights, because there were some times where Bakasur was going back into a fight with low health he had no business going back into, and Asi would offer him more attack speed, flat penetration, which takes place last, and again, flat penetration doesn't care about any other penetration effect, so flat penetration is always exactly as effective as it looks like on the tin. Okay? Would have given him 15 flat pen, again, increased attack speed, better lifesteal, a passive that would have helped keep him alive a little bit better, and 5 less power than what Serrated Edge is providing if you pull out Serrated Edge's passive. Then you go into Executioner, the Ferocious Executioner, you get that glyph, you do the extra damage, that's magical. Then you finish off, you sell Golden Blade, you buy Bloodforge for the damage output, for that 70, I'm sorry, it's 65 now, for that 65 power. I think it's 65. But you buy Bloodforge for the 60 to 75 power. Huge spike in your damage output, because that's 60 to 75 just straight up increased damage on your auto attacks, and then you finish up with a nice Protector of the Jungle. That is what he should have done. He would have been able to push himself a little farther in the late game, I think, if he'd done that. But that's just me. Now, Obviously, he played pretty well throughout, and his build didn't make a huge difference. But what really killed the team was Bologna. Now, Death's Toll is great on Bologna. Fantastic first to pick up. I can understand why she went Aussie here. She was going for the auto attack build. She wanted the lifesteal. The problem here is that this basically neglects Bologna's very strong abilities completely. This is why typically you want Soul Eater. There's actually several important reasons why a lot of solo laners build Soul Eater over Aussie, even with auto attackers or even with an auto attacking strategy in mind. First off, let's look at Soul Eater when it's fully stacked. Here we are. We have 40 power. We have 15% lifesteal. Right? First off, we have more power. We have the same base lifesteal. We don't get the attack speed, but we have 10% penetration. We have 10% cooldown, where this offers us 15 flat penetration. Now you might be thinking to yourself, well, Professor, flat penetration is a little bit better in the early game. And in most situations, that's very true. The problem here is that this is a solo lane, and the very next item that anybody's going to build against Bologna, or even for that matter, even a solo lane Ratatoskr or any physical solo lane, the next item is a physical protection item. And your percentage penetration starts to become important right away. This is typically why this is built as a second item in a lot of solo lane builds. You get pen, you get cooldown, you get some lifesteal on your auto attacks, your abilities heal you, you get a decent amount of 40 power. Okay? Bologna should have built this, because Bologna's hammer swing would have healed her an absolute ton. On just the wind-up, the swing around and the impact, yeah, if Mulan missed her hook shot, she would have been in a world of pain due to Soul Eater. And then, Bologna's second mistake was not building physical protections. I don't know what caused Bologna to build Shogun's Kusari as her third item. This makes no damn sense. You are fighting against a physical solo laner, and you also know, because I ganked you fairly early to try to put Mulan back on the front foot, and then you sacrificed yourself for some unholy reason. We'll talk about that mistake in a bit. You knew the enemy jungle was physical. You knew your laning opponent was physical. You build Shogun's Kusari as your third item. No. This should have been, and again, keeping in mind Bologna was going for the auto attack build, this should have been Berserker's Shield. That would have been a perfectly fine and acceptable starting item. 40 physical protection, some attack speed, a really powerful passive. Yes, that's fine. Why the... I don't know what possessed Bologna to build Shogun's Kusari as a third item. Now, some people will say the attack speed. Yes, I understand that. That is an attack speed increase of 30% for Bologna. Behold, 25% attack speed. It is a 5% attack speed difference. Physical protections, which mattered right away. 20 power instead of 10% cooldown reduction, which if you're going for an auto attack build, you don't need the cooldown reduction a lot of the time anyways. This was the stronger pick all along the way. 15 HP 5 for Pete's sakes, to help you sustain in lane a little bit longer. What was Bologna thinking? I have no idea what the logic process was here, but it was completely wrong. This should have been third. This would have been an acceptable fourth item, but I would have personally built it fifth. Frostbound Hammer is actually fine here. You might be confused. Consider. Cupid, obviously is building auto attacks. This would have really helped against Cupid. Ra doesn't have an escape, so this would have locked down Ra with no problems. And if either Mulan or I had gone into auto attacks, which we hadn't, but I don't think Bologna was paying that much attention, this would have been really good there. Not a bad pick. I can understand why this was built. Not ideal, obviously, but I can understand it. This still should have been protections instead. This should have been Shogun's Kusari with some other form of physical protection being the fourth item. Maybe something like, Contagion? We had a lot of healing on our team. Toxic Blade would have been an acceptable substitute. Which, by the way, incidentally, Bakasur should have built Toxic Blade at some point as well. It would have gone a lot better for him, but anyways. She was doomed the instant she built Shogun's Kusari. Asi isn't as good a pick for warriors, for most warriors, especially Bologna. Soul Eater is a stronger pick here. Aussie is acceptable. It's just not ideal. This was totally a mistake. There was no reason to build this here. Beyond that, the rest of their builds are fairly fine. Ymir built really classic support. Not sure why this was the third item again. This should have been the fourth. There's a bit of a mix-up here. These should have been swapped, but okay. I would have also appreciated... No, that's fine. No. Breastplate of Valor should have been third, and Shogun's Gusari should have been fourth here. Alright. You know, that's all I can really say. The Sheep Lange's build is okay. I do somewhat question the picking up of Silver Branch over Dominance. Dominance, I think, works a little bit better for Sheep Lange because he doesn't have any kind of attack speed buff, so you're not... I mean, look at his attack speed. His attack speed is 2.0 with all of this. And he has Bluestone Pendant, which was probably going to be Corrupted Bluestone, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. This I do question. I don't know why you would build this on Sheep Lange. I know a lot of people are going to say, well, it's really good with the Poison Darts. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. It's great with Poison Darts. The issue is that Poison Darts is an ability, and Sheep Lange is a hunter. Sheep Lange is an ADC. He shouldn't be focusing on his ability damage. There are exactly 3 hunters that can get away with that. Sheep Lange is not one of them. That is Neith. That is Chiron. There is one other one that I cannot remember the name of off the top of my head. I'll remember it in a second. Sheep Lange is not an ability-based hunter. He's an auto-attacking hunter. This should have been, with the crit build in mind, this should have been Gilded Arrow. Alright? Go into a really nice, beautiful, I think it's the Ornate Arrow, or one of the other arrows, the one that with crits. Would have been fantastic. This should have been Dominance. This should have been Deathbringer. Magical Time. His build is acceptable. I again, other than Silver Branch Bow being completely unnecessary on Sheep Lange because he does not have an auto attack speed buff, and he was never going to hit 2.5, and the existence of Bluestone Pendant in this build. My allies... Well, see, Ra had a rough time. Ra had a difficult time because, first off, Ra versus Yu Huang is not a favorable matchup for Ra. Yu Huang roots Ra, Yu Huang burns Ra, Ra dies. That's basically how that runs. In light of this, Ra's decision to build stacks was highly risky and did not pay off. Alright, if you have a bad matchup in the mid lane, you don't want to be building stacks, typically speaking. There are exceptions to this rule. Ra versus Yu Huang is not one of these. This really should have been Bancroft's talent. Get some nice lifesteal in there, try to sustain yourself in this bad matchup, increase that power, increase that lifesteal. That would have been much better. Also, Staff of Mirrodin was built, I would argue, a little bit too soon. This is a very expensive item, and I think it's a little too expensive as a third item. A great item on Ra, and I completely understand why this was built, and I have no issues with Ra's building this. I just think it was a hair too early, especially since Ra was already going to be a little bit behind because of trying to stack Book of Thoth. Which, again, Book of Thoth is a powerful item on Ra. The issue is that because of the matchup, Ra really shouldn't have gone for this, just because of the matchup specifically. Beyond that, Spirit Desolation would have made a better third item, to be honest. You could have gotten that flat pen in there, get some nice cooldowns, got a really huge spike in power, which would have really nicely accented the Book of Thoth. Soul Reaver, great pick here. I mean, again, Bakasur gets temporary increased protections when eating a minion. We've got Bologna, we've got Ymir. This is a fantastic pick. I am imagining this would have been Spirit the Magus. I can't see how this would have been Divine Ruin because Bologna was the only one self-healing in any amount at all. Sheep Lange, only at the end of the game, built significant lifesteal to actually matter. So, Bakasur self-heals, but that's about it. So I'm anticipating this would have been the equally awesome choice of Spirit the Magus, but again, I think Ra just front-loaded too much considering his matchup. That's my only real criticism of Ra. All these items work great. I think these two items were a little bit... Well, Book of Thoth shouldn't have been built in such a bad matchup. This was just built a little too early, that's all. Again, Bancroft's talent would have been a much better choice here. But that's about all I've got to talk about here. Although I do want to briefly mention that the reason why the Bellona fell so far behind is because she did die under tower to very specifically Mulan. This gave Mulan a huge spike. And normally, yeah, normally that first death wouldn't have mattered too much. The problem is that Mulan already had a kill at that point. I can't remember if it was a Bellona kill or what, but Mulan was already a kill ahead of Bellona at that point, and Mulan got the credit for that kill as well. So when Bellona died to Mulan that second time, or died and gave Mulan the second kill at the very least, because that was her first death, I think, Mulan was able to shoot ahead and completely dominate, because Mulan versus Bellona is not a great matchup. I earlier referenced that if Mulan misses the hook shot on Bellona while she's swinging her hammer, Bellona has a huge advantage. And yeah, all Mulan has to do to cancel Bellona's biggest damaging ability is just use the hook shot. And that's fairly predictable movement a lot of the time. The Bellona's going to be focusing on either you or your wave. I mean, you're swinging around a big hammer specifically to deal damage. There's only so many things you can do with that. So that's just a bad matchup for Bellona in the first place. Combine that with a really psychotic build and the early death to an already ahead Mulan. Oh, there's no way she was making it back. There's no way. So that's what happened with Bellona very specifically. It was a combination of... It was literally a worst-case scenario combination. Early death to an already ahead enemy solo laner while building really oddly equals disaster. I feel bad for the Ymir. He was good. He missed a couple of freezes, but for Pete's sakes, I'm Ratatoskr. Ratatoskr is the second base... In terms of base move speed... well, not even base move speed, but in terms of the move speed stat, he's the second fastest. Mercury beats him, and the only junglers that really consistently beat him have to use abilities to do so. For example, Awilish's Panther, Suku, I think his name is. Yeah, she rides him for extra movement speed. That's not really, regular move. So, other than those exceptions, Ratatoskr is like the second fastest assassin in the game. Thanatos gives him a run for his money, though. But yeah, Ratatoskr is consistently the second fastest jungler in the game. So I'm not surprised that Ymir missed some freezes on me. It's pretty tough to predict Ratatoskr, which is, again, one of the benefits of him, as I mentioned earlier. But with that being said, thank you all very much for joining me. If you liked this, please like and subscribe. If you didn't, please ignore me. And if you have any comments, questions, concerns, ideas, suggestions, or requests, please leave them down in the comment section below. And thank you all very much for joining me, and have a great 24 hours.